Hello, everybody. Today is Tuesday, July 21st. Welcome back into the Keep Boone Healthy Facebook channel. I'm David Jackson with the Boone Area Chamber of Commerce, and today we are talking to you about an organization that has been around our community for a while now that has been driving some very important conversations that have continued despite all of our pivoting of schedules and changing of our normal operations here during COVID-19. We're talking about the Watauga Compassionate Community Initiative. WCCI is how you have heard that referred to before. This has been an organization that was started in a very grassroots way that has led to some very substantive and powerful conversations to help our community understand how to better be trauma informed. So today we have Emily Harwood with us from App Healthcare and Crystal Kelly from the Children's Council to provide us some updates on what's going on with WCCI and better allow us to understand how we can continue to engage in this important work in our community. So Emily, we'll start first with you. If you both can just explain a little bit about what your roles are with your respective organizations before we get started deeper into our content.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Harwood. I am the Health Promotion Program Manager at App Healthcare. I work in Watauga, Ashe, and Allegheny counties on improving community health outcomes. So that looks like finding the root causes of poor health and then developing programs and interventions to impact those both in the short term and long term moving through time.
Excellent. Thank you for being with us today. Crystal?
Yeah, and my name is Crystal Kelly. I am the Director of Strategic Initiatives with the Children's Council. I work primarily on system building for young children and families, so really working to convene stakeholders and raise awareness about the importance of early childhood and brain development and how we can collectively work together to leverage resources to have a stronger community.
So Crystal, let's start with you. For people that may not be as familiar with what WCCI is, how it got started, and what ultimately the goals of this group coming together and doing this work are, can you give us kind of a brief overview of where things started and where they sit today?
So about 5 years ago in 2015, a group of child serving agency leaders got together really wanting to look at what is the state of our community and children and families, and how can we make it stronger, essentially understanding the number of children living in poverty, the effects of that on their development, and our concern that there was some long-term negative consequences of not having interventions really early. So as a result of those early conversations, in 2017, we held our first annual conference that was really around trauma and how it affects children and what it would mean to be a trauma-informed community. Like, what would that actually look like if all agencies and businesses and individuals came together to provide the environments for children to thrive? And essentially what that means is children need supportive and nurturing relationships and environments. They need that in the context of their own families, but their families need that in the context of their community. As a result of that conference, WCCI was born. So we had so much energy and momentum that came from people learning about the effects of trauma and toxic stress on the developing brain and how that can lead to many, many long-term health and social consequences. So I think at that time there was probably about 60 people that were like, I want to show up. And we started meeting monthly and formed a collaborative. And really just have a vision that our community can be relationship driven and compassionate, and a community where we promote health and well-being and work to prevent adversity as much as possible.
And Emily, from a public health perspective, this conversation, I'm sure, has taken your staff, your work, and other agencies in a variety of different directions over the course of these formative years. Certainly, I'm sure there have been some changes to how that's been implemented now that COVID is here, but how has the work evolved and continued during a time where it's been more difficult to get to people?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we do in public health is look for, like I said earlier, the root causes of poor health outcomes down the road. And so we understand that childhood trauma and toxic stress are two root causes of poor health outcomes that are going to manifest for years to come. And so an event like COVID-19 and what we're experiencing right now is likely going to have really, really intense outcomes for years and years to come. And so understanding that, we know that it's so important for, while we're juggling so many responsibilities right now, managing the immediate threat, that we're also thinking 5-10 years ahead of what this could look like down the road. So we've been working on a couple of different projects right here in the moment. And like any of our work, we know that at App Healthcare, we don't do it alone. So we've been working with some of our wonderful community partners and organizations that we collaborate with in WCCI, such as the Children's Council, Watauga County Schools, Appalachian State University, the Mediation and Restorative Justice Center, Western Youth Network, and more, to think about how can we really address ACEs, which we'll talk about later, but trauma, and think forward about what this could look like down the road. So we've been working on a new project around building community resilience. And the project specifically is around creating trauma-informed businesses. And so earlier, Crystal was talking about what does it look like to be a trauma-informed community? Well, a piece of that puzzle is trauma-informed businesses. So if our employers here in Watauga County understand what toxic stress can do to an individual throughout their entire lifespan, they're better able to support and come alongside their employees and support them through whatever challenges they're facing right now and then ahead in the future. So one of the things that's at the core of trauma-informed business is making sure your employees have strong mental health. And one of the ways that we know we can do that is through policy recommendations and then practice recommendations for ways that employers can really implement new things within their organization that are going to support a better, more positive workplace. So we're working with all of the partners that I just mentioned to create a toolkit of sorts that will include policies and recommendations that businesses, organizations, nonprofits, all of the above can implement and cater to their own specific needs and core values of their organization so that they can make sure that their employees' mental health is at the forefront of everything that they're doing, and hopefully mitigate some of the poor health outcomes that could occur if we don't go ahead and step in right now in the moment and make sure our employees have what they need to be successful and thrive in their own workplaces.
Well, and I would imagine too, you know, and Crystal, we've talked a lot about how toxic stress and some of the issues, the social determinants of health impact young children. We've talked about that discussion through your work with the Children's Council for a while. You stack up though the mental burden that COVID has brought. Everything from family disruption to anxiety about sickness and illness and how that impacts family members. You stack that on top of someone who has already been exposed to that toxic stress or that difficult upbringing that has led them down the roads of some of these issues. I'm sure that just weighs so much greater than what the normal level that people are dealing with on a daily basis. Have you seen those needs change of not only the frequency of engagement, but the type of engagement that mental health providers are really working with people on right now?
You know, I think what we're seeing the most of is just an elevated need for what we call concrete supports. So many times families or people, individuals, adults, they have a need for mental health supports, but if their basic needs aren't being met, if they don't have food security, if they don't have access to safe housing, things like that, then the mental health can be secondary to what they're actually seeking. And so we've seen a huge increase in many of our social service agencies of families that are seeking extra supports. And when you look at that through the lens of a child, when we're talking about toxic stress, essentially what it means is stress is healthy, first of all. Like, we're not saying no one should have stress in their life. Toxic stress is when it's elevated and it doesn't really come back down. And the way that it becomes elevated is when you don't have that buffer. And we consider adults who are connecting and nurturing and able to be stable the buffer to any kind of stress that you may be facing as a developing child. And it actually can disrupt brain architecture and body development and all kinds of things. And so when you put COVID and 19 on top of that, and you think about how that's affecting, I mean, just think about how it affects us. We're worried about all kinds of different things. It sometimes can lead to you being maybe less present with your children, or maybe you have a shorter fuse, and if that continues over time, that's where we're saying toxic stress. The mental health providers in our community, I mean, I just want to like elevate how amazing all of our organizations really are, and their resiliency to pivot and offer services in a different way. I know our largest provider, Daymark, kept their doors open for crises, but then did do a lot of telehealth support. So we're able to, there wasn't really a disruption in that for many families. And then there's many other private providers that have also been able to do the same thing. So overall, I would say our service providers in Watauga County are extremely resilient and well connected to each other. And we're really able to pivot services pretty quickly.
So for community members or businesses that might want to access that toolkit and really try to implement some of these, I love, Emily, the way you said that, into their core values, because we know that that's how a lot of businesses really implement things. It's what they're about as a business, what they're about as a leadership team, and how they want to deploy those things within their company. How best can they get their hands on this material and get involved in this process to begin to take what you're presenting steps further throughout their business and the families that they serve?
Absolutely. So once we have the toolkit ready to go, we're going to make sure work with you guys at the chamber and as many avenues as possible to get the word out of how to connect with us. But right now, in the interim, even if you would just like to provide input on things that you think would be helpful for us to think through as we're creating this toolkit, you can by all means email me or Crystal, and we can find a time to chat and just think through what would make sense for your organization, because we know that there isn't a cookie cutter answer of what each organization is going to need to implement. So any feedback will be very, very appreciated. But if you want to get involved and or learn more and have access to the toolkit, please just reach out to myself or Crystal, and we can get you connected with the right information.
And we'll make sure the contact information is down below this video so you can see exactly how to get to that. Crystal, you were about to say something.
Well, I was just going to piggyback that in addition to that, WCCI has created a trauma-informed business presentation. So we can come and we can offer that virtually to you and your businesses on just what are some, sort of global recommendations. Things that are really applicable to this time would be implementation of family-friendly policies, of flexible work schedules, things like that, especially for any employees who may also be parents. I think we all know that this is a really challenging time as we've learned what our school session is going to look like, and just the need for employers to be flexible and allowing, looking at people as whole people and the context of what we're all going through. I mean, other recommendations would be having spaces at work for check-ins, like really implementing relationship-based practices in our workplaces. It may sound out there for depending on your industry, but it makes a huge difference when employees feel like they're cared for, and you see higher employee retention, you see higher productivity, the more flexible you can be, actually.
Just had a flashback to March, early March, and simpler times when we had a lunch and learn about the trauma-informed business conversation. That was one of the last things we did before everything got shut down. So it's a great way to reintroduce that concept and let businesses know that there is an opportunity for information to be brought to you about how you can implement some of these strategies in your business. I guess the last question I've got for you two, as people begin to get more engaged in some of these things and may want to become more of a part of the more broad approach that WCCI has brought to our community in terms of generating conversation and talking about where some of those check-in points may occur. What's the best way for people to get involved and to maybe bring more of that volunteer effort to the group as you continue to move these conversations and others forward through your work?
The actual collaborative is open to anyone in the community. Anybody who wants to get involved, learn more, can come. It's the first Thursday of the month at 8:30 a.m. We can get more information also posted below. In addition, we're going to be starting some lunch and learns that will be held on the second Wednesday of every month. And that's just a place to really dive a little deeper on specific topics. There will be a calendar of different speakers who will be throughout the year. But that will be headed up by Denise Presnell, who's the chair of WCCI and is super passionate about this work and really just wants to spread the information as far as possible. Those are the two primary ways that I would see being involved. What do you think, Em?
Yeah, I totally agree. I was just going to add that we have some specific subgroups within WCCI where we break into smaller groups and focus on specific actionable items that we can be working on to really make an impact in our community. So it's a group that is very passionate, but also action oriented. So we talk and come up with solutions for the issues that we are uncovering. And I can just say for me personally, it's been just one of my most favorite groups that I've been able to be involved with. So would very much encourage anyone who has an interest in this topic to get involved.
Well, and again, thinking too outside of the norms of maybe being involved in specific issues, it can be people that are involved in just helping administer the conversation. So all skill sets certainly apply. I know Wisteria White in our office works quite a bit with WCCI and enjoys helping on the organizational side of things quite a bit, but adds to a number of other conversations. So really, wherever your skills meet you or can meet the needs that are out there, there are opportunities for you to engage. So thank you both for spending some time with us to update us on what this important group is doing in our community. Obviously, everybody is pivoting in different directions with what COVID has brought to us and the challenges there. But we appreciate the fact that you all are carrying on and we are willing and ready to share that information once we do get a hold of it to the broader community at large. So thanks for spending some time with us here today.
Thanks for having us, David.
Thanks for having us.